ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। सर्वेभ्यः नमस्काराः। भगवद्गीता जयन्ती उत्सव निमित्ततया आचर्यमाणा सभा कृष्णार्पिता भवतु, तेन च श्रीकृष्ण प्रसाद प्राप्तिरस्तु। Today we have Shri Dr. Kiran Kumar Salagame as the speaker, who is more than a clinical psychologist. He has extensively worked for more than 3 decades to unlock the psychological meaning of the ancient Bharatiya scriptures. His work to establish Indian psychology as an independent area of study and research has opened up new possibilities for the upcoming generations of psychologists all over the globe. His version of Indian psychology is not theoretical, rather it is experimental, experiential and empirical as well. He is a devout follower of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. He regularly visits the ashrama at Tiruvannamalai and performs meditation to discover and rediscover his existence. I would like to bring to the notice of the audience that the above aspects of Kiranji was given by his doctoral student. Now, I would present his achievements as compactly as possible from his 15-page resume filled with inspiring accomplishments. He holds BSc in Science, BA and MA in Psychology from the University of Mysore. He obtained his PhD from NIMHANS, Bengaluru. His 32 years of teaching ended gracefully when he retired as a professor in 2014 from the Department of Psychology in the University of Mysore. Shri Kiranji has taught courses from biological processes to consciousness. In other words, he has enlightened thousands of students in psychological perspective of Deha, Manas and Atma. He has ably guided 15 students and helped them obtain a PhD in psychology. He was a senior research fellow at the prestigious Indian Council of Social Sciences Research, New Delhi. He was also a Fulbright Nehru Visiting Lecturer Fellowship at the University of Central Arkansas Conway at USA. The International Academy for Yoga Teacher Training at Belgrade, Serbia, has conferred upon him for the honorary professorship. He was also a Fulbright postdoctoral fellow at the Saybrook University, Canada. Professor Kiran Kumar has served as the Vice President of International Transpersonal Association in the USA. He works as an editor for 8 highly esteemed international journals. Similarly, he also works as an editor for 8 recognized national journals. He has developed a psychological test to measure the social cognitive ability of children. He has published 4 articles in highly reputed international journals, and all of these 4 revolve around the thought process of Bharatiya civilization. He has also published 23 articles in Indian Journal, and he has contributed to 13 books by writing a chapter each. He has traveled exhaustively in USA and taught in major universities, and he was invited to deliver lectures in Uganda, Australia, Czech Republic, Canada, Serbia, Russia, UK, and Bahrain. Well, After having read this much out, I need to tell that this is just a tip of an iceberg. Over to you, Dr. Kiran Kumar, sir. We request you to illuminate our mind with your psychological perspectives of Bhagavad Gita.
Namaskaram to organizers of this event, and without losing much time, I will try to make a presentation on a very sacred text of our Indian tradition. I have structured my presentation today in 4 or 5 sections. I will give a little preamble. I will speak about the contemporary relevance. I will speak about what Bhagavad-Gita is all about and what is psychological perspective, and finally what strategies we can adopt as taught by Lord Sri Krishna. First, I would like to make some remarks or comments about my own background, which you can take it as confession or you can take it as disclaimer. As you know, in the movies and in television, they put up a notice that characters in this are fictional, or we are not responsible for any misunderstanding, and so on and so forth. So I would like to say something so that it will keep all of you in a perspective, because I don't know who are all the audience or the participants. I see here 68 people have logged in, and they all, I'm sure, are familiar with Bhagavad Gita and they may be more knowledgeable about it. I don't know their background. I'm not seeing, and having taught in the classroom for 32 years, it is somewhat difficult for me to look at myself and speak. So let me go to the gallery view, and if there are some people who I can see, otherwise it will not be an interaction for me. Now, I understand there will be a lot of individual differences. All of you have different interests, and some of you may be more novice, some of you are more experienced, some of you may be experts. So I cannot presume who are all the participants, who are my audience, what is their level of understanding. So I have structured as far as possible my talk in a simple way. My introduction to Bhagavad Gita happened when I was in high school. I was between 11 and 14 years of age. And I learned Sthita Prajna Lakshana by heart as part of Sanskrit class and Subhashitani. And I'm sure at that age, I did not have a clear concept of what Sthita Prajna Lakshana means for life, or whether belonged to Bhagavad Gita or something I have forgotten. But however, as I grew old, as my cognitive maturity happened, I understood that this is from Bhagavad Gita, but that has stuck with me and it has helped me throughout under many circumstances. And unlike Swarupa or Gayatri or many of the Nirakula team, I am not someone who has mastered all the chapters and shlokas of Bhagavad Gita. I have not studied it traditionally, but I have studied it as and when I needed something to understand. I have tried to grasp the essence of what it is all about. And a few years ago, one of another doctoral student like Swarup showed interest in working on Bhagavad Gita for his doctoral thesis, and he approached me. So that was the occasion when I happened to read through Bhagavad Gita again, some of the chapters, and discussed his research work was on how Bhagavad Gita helps as a counseling strategy. Because nowadays there have been a talk about employing Bhagavad Gita as a procedure of counseling to help people. Because Krishna counseled Arjuna. This is how many authors, scholars, philosophers, and spiritual people have actually expressed that the dialogue between the two. So therefore, we did some work, Dr. Siddhalingaya Hiremat. So he conducted a study in North Karnataka in Belgaum district. He conducted empirical study on whether there will be any change in the personality, the attitude, in sattva, rajas, and tamas, or in one's aspects of self-sense or ahankara, for among those who attended a Bhagavad Gita discourse for 1 month. So it was more of a psychological research study. And what I am presenting today is not based on any particular commentary on Bhagavad Gita. As you all know, there are many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, and I am not following any particular commentary. I am just presenting my thoughts as a psychologist. So, how do we understand Bhagavad Gita? What it is? I'm sure all of you are all familiar, and all of you have advanced, or all of you have studied some of it in depth. But as you all know, it was something that was written about in Dwapar Yuga of this Manvantara. And we do not know exactly when Dwapar Yuga happened. But present day archaeologists trace it back to around 6000 BC. So it's an approximately 8,000-year-old stuff. there is no definiteness about these ages, but anywhere from 3000 to 10,000 BC is the is the Vedic age, and the Upanishads, Bhagavad-Gita, earlier Vedas have all come between this broad span of age, and the future will tell exactly when all these happened in this yuga and all that. Anyway, let us not go into all those details. Now, let us try to understand what Bhagavad Gita is as Bhagavad Gita, whatever that is in the book. So, at the end of each chapter, you will find this written: Sri Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sankhya Yogaha Karma Yogaha Karma Sannyasa Yogaha Gunatraya Vibhaga Yogaha, and so on and so on. So, therefore, basically, what Bhagavad Gita is dealing with is Brahma Vidya and how to obtain that Brahma Vidya. And it is called Yoga Shastra. So, this is the original import of that. And there is also a sloka in chapter 18, sloka number 67, which prescribes, Krishna prescribes to Arjuna to whom it should be told and to whom it should not be told. So I have made a translation here. Don't tell this to one who does not do tapas. Tapas does not mean one who sits in the forest or something. Samyami, you can say. To one who does not have faith, love, reverence, that's bhakti towards Veda, Shastra, Parameshwara, Mahatma, Guru, elders. To one who has no desire to listen, and must not tell one who is an atheist or with a distorted perception about me. Me means the divine Krishna. So, this is some kind of a disclaimer in the sense that who are all the adhikari for Bhagavad Gita and who is not an adhikari for Bhagavad Gita. So, what it means is, if we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we have to understand a whole world view, what we call in sociology and psychology as world view. And what is a world view? World view simply means mainly the set of understanding or knowledge that has developed about the universe as a whole, about the beings in it, about life and death, about the nature of cosmos, about the origin of this universe, about how to obtain valid knowledge, what is the purpose and meaning of life and existence, and so on and on and on and on. All this put together is called a worldview. So therefore, India has a worldview of its own for how many years, how many centuries. If we accept the worldview of Yuga, then the number of years are in lakhs, Kalpa, Manvantara, and so on and on. So we have a worldview, and within that worldview, this Bhagavad Gita has happened in a particular desha, particular kala, and particular Vartaman. So there is a space-time place coordinate, so to say. And many of you know, even today, in the religious functions, the Purohit starts any function with a sankalpa. Jambu Dvipe, Bharatakande, Bharatavarshe, and Shaliva, Hanishake, and all that. So we try to locate ourselves in all our actions in a particular space-time coordinate. So Bhagavad Gita has also happened in that coordinate, and it has happened in the background of a particular worldview. And that worldview is very simple. We can call it broadly a spiritual worldview. And that spiritual worldview has been enunciated in different darshanas differently. And here, that worldview is Brahma Vidya. And what it means is ultimately the ultimate principle of this whole universe is Brahman. So that is Brahma Vidya. And so a person has to aspire for Brahma Jnana ultimately. And that is called a Purushartha. That is one of the Purusharthas. And we speak of four Purusharthas: Dharmartha, Kama, Moksha. So, according to Bhagavad Gita, if you go through, it is Moksha Shastra. It is not Artha Shastra. It is not even Dharma Shastra. Obviously, it is not Kama Shastra. It is about Moksha Shastra. So that is the worldview we are operating. So now, in that worldview, you have the context of Mahabharata. And that is the broader context, and the immediate context is Arjuna's existential conflict and psychological state of leading to confusion, and his refusal to wage a war against Kauravas. So that's the immediate context. So whatever that is there in the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita is essentially Krishna trying to change the outlook of Arjuna, change his attitude, and make him to take up Gandiva and start fighting. In other words, he has to fight, he has to act. So this is the context. Now, you can think a little about why Arjuna, why not Dharmaraya, why not Bhima, why not Nakula Sahadeva? Why Arjuna alone out of the five brothers felt the need to go and stand between Kauravas and Pandavas? And why such a greatest warrior, having witnessed the battlefield, felt that, oh, I don't need to fight this war. I don't want to fight this war. I want to give up. So, what is this predicament of Arjuna? If you just think about it, you will see here Dharmaraya is always bound by the role he is assigned. He is this eldest of the Pandavas. And he just goes according to the role expectations of him, whether playing the dice, whether going to the forest, whether whatever Kunti says, whatever Bhishma says, whatever Dhritarashtra says, he just follows that. He is a perfect role player, so to say. Then Bhima, you see, is someone who is also a role player. After all, if you compare Pandavas with Duryodhana and Kauravas, Pandavas are the good boys, so to say, and Duryodhana is the bad boy, so to say. Just to simplify it, don't take it in a very serious way. But Bhima, he is somebody who does not think, who does not reflect. Bhima is a very authentic person. Authentic person means he is, whatever he feels, he is ready to act upon. So Draupadi trusts Bhima more than anybody because she is sure that Bhima is always there for her, not the others. But Bhima is authentic and spontaneous. That is why he is the only one who takes a vow when Draupadi Vastraparana takes place. All the rest are thinking about it, what to do. But Bhima stood up and took the vow. Whether that vow is correct or what not, we will not go into the evaluation. But it happened like that. Okay. So now Nakula and Sahadeva, they will just follow the other three elders. So therefore, they are part of the role playing. But Arjuna is the one, you see, who actually is a highly skilled warrior, no doubt about it. Very highly accomplished person. He has developed his uniqueness, his ability, his aptitude, everything. And he is also a very sensitive human being. He is quite emotional, quite compassionate. So what happens is, though he has come to the battlefield, he is not, he wants to see the whole battlefield and feels that what is the point of all this war? Why should I wage the war? What do I get out of all this? Even if I win the war, there is nobody to celebrate. There is no Bhishma, there is no Drona, who are all very near and dear to him. And of course, even Duryodhana, he says, oh, he is my cousin, in spite of all the negative things that happened to them. Still, he considers his own. So therefore, Arjuna is the one person who is, in a way, spiritually evolving. So therefore, he, as a sensitive human being, he feels that. He feels he cannot wage this war. So he says, sorry, Krishna, I don't want to wage the war. I will give up. So in psychological language, we call it an existential predicament, to be or not to be. And whatever he has experienced at that moment are signs of fear and signs of depression, which you are all familiar with that. I don't want to go into details of that. So what Krishna does is he wants to motivate Arjuna, and for that he uses two strategies basically. One is he speaks about what is Arjuna's dharma as a warrior. That is the social dimension. What is his role as a kshatriya? What is his kartavya, duty? So he speaks of all that. But Arjuna simply says, forget all those things, Krishna. I'm not bothered about all that. All that losing reputation, etc., whatever you are saying is lost. Don't worry. But I don't want to kill all these people and celebrate. So then Krishna takes him to another level of understanding what is life, what is meaning of life, what is existence, what is real human nature, what is real self. and how is it different from all the self. So uh, I would put it in a psychological language as Bhagavad Gita, in a nutshell, is Arjuna's journey of consciousness, expansion of awareness, or to put it in the language of identity and self, it is a journey from what is called belonging identity to awareness identity of the highest kind. So, Krishna is facilitating Arjuna's transformation from identifying oneself with what one belongs to and what one belongs to and what belongs to oneself, from that to a level of awareness which in India we call pure consciousness, Brahman, or you know, uh, Atman, and so many other terms which are all synonymous at some level. So therefore, if we want to understand Bhagavad Gita properly, if we want to use it, there must be a purpose for us, because otherwise, I don't think Vyasa Maharshi would have spent 18 adhyayas to give all the details about all those, the nature of self and other many details that you can find in the Bhagavad Gita. So I think this is the context. So the question is this: are we Gita readers ready for a journey from an identity which is biopsychosocial self, as psychologists we call, to a transcendental self? So that is the primary prerequisite. Anybody who thinks I want to shift my locus of identity from Deha to Jiva and Jiva to Atman, all such people are ready for Bhagavad Gita. So this is the primary context of Bhagavad Gita. But did automatically Arjuna uh, got that realization and he fought the war? Because at the end, he says, Nashto moha, I have lost all that moha I had, all the illusions I had. Now I am ready to fight. Not necessarily, because even after all that, when he had to fight Bhishma, he was unable to fight. He was unable to pick up his Gandiva and shoot at Bhishma. So Krishna gets very angry and he gets down from chariot, walks towards Bhishma with his Sudarshan Chakra, and he is ready to kill Bhishma. Then Arjuna runs after Krishna and says, pleads him, see, you took the oath of not fighting in the war, but except be my charioteer. So don't break your oath. I will do the fighting. And afterwards, again, Bhishma only gives suggestions and clues as to when he should be killed. And then Krishna finally, shoots his arrow at Bhishma. Therefore, whatever knowledge of self or Brahman or whatever it is, except for great Mahatmas, for all, it is a question of gradual progress. It is not something that can happen. Even after Arjuna seeing Vishwarupa of Krishna, it doesn't happen. It takes time. So now, this is all about Bhagavad Gita. Now I will go back to psychology And what is psychological perspective? And I will try to, now it is 7:37. So let me, I'm told the session is up to 8:15. So let me see how quickly I can just wrap up. I have still half an hour more. Okay. Now you see that what is psychological perspective? As I told you in the beginning, anything, any knowledge, sorry, any knowledge develops within a worldview. So all the Indian knowledge systems we have developed in the spiritual worldview, whether it is philosophy, whether it's art, whether it's architecture, whether it's astronomy and astrology, whether defense, whether it is Arthashastra, Rajya Shastra, whatever you take, there is a spiritual worldview which is guiding all that knowledge development. So keep that in mind. And now let us think of how psychology has developed. I mean modern psychology. Modern psychology developed in the background of ancient Greek philosophy of naturalism. Natural philosophy holds that everything in nature is guided by certain regulations and principles within the nature. And whatever cause and effect relationship we have to understand has to be understood within the nature itself without invoking any supernatural causal agent, whether you call it God or whether you call it creator or whatever you call, there is something beyond the nature. So within the nature itself, we have to find a meaning, understanding, and according to Greeks also, they wanted to find out what is the ultimate substance of the universe, how this universe has come into existence. And in Greek, this is called physis. Perhaps the word physics has emerged from physis, Phusis. So natural philosophers were after physis. And it is in that process only they studied matter. And in the process of studying matter, they studied about molecules, atoms, and then neutron, electron, and proton, and then particle physics. And today they speak about many, subtle particles which are no more particles, but they are packets of energy. Like that, modern science has developed in the background of natural philosophy. Another important thing about natural philosophy is the famous statement of a French philosopher, René Descartes, who said there are two orders of reality. One is the order of mind, another is order of matter. So it is known as famous Cartesian split. Now, as physicists went pursuing matter, psychologists went pursuing mind. What is mind? What is its function? What is nature of awareness, consciousness, etc. In this process, though some of the earliest psychologists, like Wilhelm Wundt, had his own method of introspection to understand mind and its function, the others who were in natural and physical sciences objected to Wilhelm Wundt's approach of introspectionism, saying you cannot observe and also be an observer. In other words, you cannot be a druk and you cannot be a drishya as far as mind is concerned. My own mind cannot observe my own functions of the mind. There is no subject and object duality. Experimenter and subject should be different. So object of experimentation should be different. Observer and observed should be different. So this is the basic idea or the procedure of experimental methodology. So therefore, this was not fitting to study mind. And of course, psyche means soul in Greek. So the same objection was raised, where is soul? We can't see it at all. Then consciousness, where is consciousness? We cannot see it from outside. Where is mind? We cannot see it from outside. So therefore, psychology had to manage giving different definitions, and it had to operate in a very narrow, limited framework, trying to find very devious methods of studying, conducting research. But still, psychology has come a long way in understanding human nature, understanding human mind. It has a lot of application. And definitely, I am not throwing away all that valuable knowledge. First and foremost, I'm a psychologist by training, and I strongly believe modern Western psychological knowledge has a lot to offer for us. But because of its what we call ontology and epistemology, modern psychology has a limited understanding of human mind and nature of consciousness. And that is where the Indian traditions have a lot to contribute. And we call it Indian psychology. There was no psychology in the ancient period. There was in Nalanda, Takshashila. But whatever we study as Indian psychology is all part of our Shastras on the one hand, and whatever we can learn from other disciplines like Natya Shastra, Kama Sutra, astrology, and many other things. So, when the title Swarup asked me to, give a talk on this, he said something about completeness. I said, I don't know what is completeness. I am a very incomplete person. Don't ask me all that. I can only tell some insights I have got from my understanding of Bhagavad-Gita. So you can put it as psychological insights on Bhagavad-Gita. But however, he has framed it as a psychological perspective. So what is this psychological perspective I can offer on Bhagavad-Gita? When I say this I can offer, I only mean to say I am not basing whatever I am telling on the commentary given by many extraordinary bright people and scholars and spiritual people like Somnathananda of Ramakrishna Ashram, or Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, or D.V. Gundappa, or Swami Rama, and so many people. They have written extraordinary commentaries. Going back to Shankaracharya has also given his own bhashya. But I am not for one who is familiar with extensively about all these bhashyas. So my understanding of it is in a limited framework. And how I, if at all, as a psychologist, how I can put it across to you. What I can say is this. Modern psychology, though started with naturalistic framework, has come out of it. It has moved away from a strict Freudian or experimental kind of thinking. Now, we have a new development in the past 50 years called transpersonal psychology. Personal, as you all understand, is limited to self, limited to one's biopsychosocial identity, or what is called ahankara in our tradition. Ahankara often is translated as egoism in Kannada. He is a ahankari. No, ahankara in a strictest sense of the term means a sense of self. One of the classical definition is ahankarta iti ahankara. I am the doer. This feeling, I am the enjoyer. This feeling of I is ahankara. It doesn't need not be evaluated. And the Bhagavad-Gita is saying, give up this. You are not the karta. Give up that. So now how do you give up that? How do you give up that sense of agency? So Krishna is offering two paths, major paths. One is the Gnana Marga, and that he calls Sankhya. And the other one is Karma, which is also called Nishkama Karma Yoga. Now, there are different terminologies used in different chapters to refer that. Jnana Yoga is also called Karma Sannyasa. Karma Yoga is called Nishkama Karma Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, Samatva Yoga, Anasakti Yoga, and so on. Now, what is the essential feature of Jnana Yoga and what is the essential feature of Karma Yoga? The essential feature of Jnana Yoga is to realize that gunas, three guna, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are produced by some kind of a maya, which Krishna calls yoga maya, accordingly as per their nature. So sattva, rajas, and tamas are operating in this universe, and Indian tradition do not make a distinction between mind and matter. Mind and matter is continuum. So sattva, rajas, tamas is in our mind, in our body, and it is also in a tree, it is also in a bird, it is also in a hill, it is in stone. Everywhere, everything is pervaded by sattva, rajas, and tamas. Then the second important point is to realize that I am not the doer of action that happens through manas, indriya, and deha. Because I am not the doer, I have no identification either with those actions, whatever happens, and whatever the effect of that. There is no attachment or the feeling of karta and bhokta. And what is the third step? It is to be one with that highest principle, that is Parabrahman. So these are the three essential features, and this is given in chapter 5, where the distinction is made between Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga and what are their characteristics. Probably you could read through that. Then coming to Karma Yoga, its features are giving up desires and fruits of action, but carrying on the activity as if you are doing it as per divine will, and you are participating in the drama which the divine is playing. So this is the essential important point of Karma Yoga. Now, what it means here, what is Jnana and what is Karma Yoga? Krishna often tells Arjuna throughout that Jnana Yoga is difficult, because Jnana Yoga is to understand the nature of the universe. And Einstein, for example, is a Jnana Yogi. He understood what is this universe is all about, how it is happening. But, and therefore, Jnana is to pursue and understand the nature of the universe and Brahman. That is why it is called Brahma Vidyayam in the beginning itself. Now, that is not possible for everybody. Therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna, Karma Yoga is easier. You can give up desires. You can act without expectations. Whatever happens, let it happen, and all that kind of a thing. So now, uh, these are the essential things. And okay, we have got a broader overview of what Bhagavad Gita is all about. Then, day to day life, why should we read Bhagavad Gita? And how does it help in our action? As I understand, as a psychologist, is this: there are individual differences. As a psychologist, we are all different in our aptitudes, our attitudes, our abilities, our emotions, our motivations, our decision making, our problem solving, and in so many ways, our desires. We are all different. So, in Bhagavad Gita, we have a system of understanding these individual differences. Just as in modern psychology, we speak of sensation, perception, emotion, cognition, will, and all kinds of different topics. And we study about learning, thinking, personality, motivation, and so on. In Bhagavad Gita, also, in a summarized way, you will find some of these individual differences, characteristics given by Krishna in our own way, in the background of Indian worldview. You will find that in chapter 13, 14, 13 Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga, chapter 14 Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, chapter 16 Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga, chapter 17 Shaddatraya Vibhaga Yoga, and in chapter 18 Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. So these are the chapters which are directly concerned with how people differ. And one of the beauty of the Indian worldview is it says Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga, Daiva and Asura. So human beings have Daiva qualities, divine qualities, and Asuri qualities, demonic qualities. So we are always in sandwiched between this. One of the humanistic psychologists, Abraham Maslow, says, in every situation, every moment, we have a progressive choice and we have a regressive choice. The progressive choice is to move towards Daiva, Daiva Guna. Regressive choice is to go back to Asuri Guna. So the human nature, evolution of human nature is to reduce the Asuri Guna and move towards the Daivi Guna or Daivi Sampatti. And it is not something which will happen automatically. It is something to be cultivated consciously. And cultivating consciously means we have to follow what Vedanta calls Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. We have to listen to all these things. We have to reflect upon these things. And we have to realize that in our own existence. So, today in the West, there is a spiritual renaissance. Many people in the West are saturated with Asuri Sampati, the pleasureful life. And they are moving towards what is called actualization of one's potentials. And many people are interested in Atma Sakshatkar. That perhaps all of you are aware. So therefore, what I would, because it is already 7 o'clock, I think I'll stop here. We have to understand these things and then try to absorb these things. And many times we often come in conflict with many circumstances, how to act, what to do, and all. Then we have to make use of it. And particularly the Sthita Prajna Lakshana of chapter 2 in the Sankhya Yoga is very useful, because there you will get a whole description of how one should take pleasure and pain, how to deal with various circumstances of life, how to regulate emotions, how to regulate our desires, sensory pleasures, and all those things are given in a very cryptic form. And that is the something which, if we actually remember, and if we study it again and again and again, reflect upon them, then I'm sure we will get benefited mostly by how to manage ourselves, what we call in today's language as self-management or self-regulation, uh, and trying to move towards a higher level. And also, as I told you, some of the uh, chapters like Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga and all will tell where we stand as far as our sattva, rajas, and tamas characteristics are concerned. In this moment, I want to inform all the participants maybe in the webinar that Swarupa, who is one of the organizers, has developed a psychological instrument to study the sattva, rajas, and tamas in people. He has taken a sample of more than 1,000 people, and he has studied, has developed a questionnaire, an instrument which can be used to understand. So, uh, so you see that, and as I told you, Dr. Siddha Lingaya Hiremat, he found in his study, which was based on a pre and post assessment study of people who listened to Bhagavad-Gita for 1 month, many of the people who had reported they have some feeling of serious psychological problems. Their scores reduced, and it came to mild after 1 month. So therefore, listening to Bhagavad Gita discourses, attending them, what happens is there is some kind of a vicarious identification with Arjuna. We are all Arjunas in one way or the other. So if we identify with Arjuna's character and understand many of the teachings, then gradually there is something called re-education. So what did Arjuna do is he gave what is called re-education counseling, or he tried to change what we call cognitive restructuring. He tried to do that and change his perspective. But that cognitive restructuring should not be confused with what we call cognitive behavior therapy in the modern clinical psychology, because this cognitive restructuring did not happen at the mental level alone, but it happened at a very highest level of transforming Arjuna to a higher level of consciousness through Vishwarupa Darshana and such things. So therefore, what I would suggest is whether we all become Brahmajnanis or not is a secondary thing. Because Krishna himself says, so many thousands of people aspire for Brahmajnana or Atmajnana, but finally only one person will attain that. So whether we attain that or not, at least in our day-to-day transaction, how to regulate our raga dveshas, our arishat vargas, how to act without expectation so that we don't get disappointed, and many such qualities can be developed. Today, we are seeing so much of violence around, so much of suicides. I just, for even very petty things, people have started committing suicide. Children have started committing suicide. We are losing that moral consciousness, that higher consciousness of our existence, our purpose. That is why we are slowly, from our country as a whole has started falling down from sattva to tamas. So from Satya Yuga to Kali Yuga, if we take, there is a tremendous degradation of the quality of human consciousness. So this Nakula Yoga group should try to increase the consciousness. Today I read in the newspapers that government has approved yogasana as a sports with competition. I don't say that it is totally wrong, but yoga has a different dimension. It is for the transformation of our consciousness and evolution. And therefore, I hope people will take these things in proper perspective. Namaskara to all of you. Thank you.
Namaste to all of you. So I initially thank Kiran Kumar sir for having delivered this wonderful thought-provoking lecture. And before we get into the question and answer session, I have a small request with the organizers there who are handling the chat. So the chat box is open for you to ask questions, guys, and all the participants can ask the questions. Meanwhile, our organizers are going to drop a feedback form there and kindly provide us feedback. And also in the feedback form, you find the donation link as well. Kindly donate. Apart from these two things, we have no other requests as such, and we move on to Kiran Kumar sir again. All those people who want to ask a question can drop your question in the chat box, and we will start discussing them. I will read the question out to sir, or if he's comfortable, he can do that. Whatever
you please read. That would be better.
Okay.
Sir. Because I feel more comfortable people asking me directly. But if there is a problem with the net, then you could read them for me and others.
Yeah. So as of now, we've got a lot of compliments, Narsimha HL, Balakrishna Rao, Vishi S, Manjula, and many other people have thanked you for this illuminating lecture. Same with Savita and same with Preeti Wadhwani. So is it to get here? Okay, so there is someone who wants to talk to you personally, Vindhya Madam. Probably Vindhya Madam, if you can drop a message or a mail to Nirakula, we will give sir's contact by contacting him. That we can do privately later.
You can send my email to anybody who want to contact.
Okay. So here's one question.
I prefer emails. I don't want telephone conversation. I will follow it up if it is necessary. Otherwise, I prefer email. That's all.
Okay. So we have two questions here. First one being, can you suggest a good starter book on Bhagavad-Gita? And the second one being, according to a popular line in the Bhagavad-Gita, Shri Krishna says that whenever adharma will take presence for establishing dharma, he shall come. Do you think in modern society of consumerism, how we define dharma and adharma has changed? There is a promise that Krishna comes. So if what we are doing is not adharma at all, then Krishna will ever come is the indirect question probably.
Okay. Should I take up or there are similar questions?
No similar questions, sir. So there are two questions. One is about the book and one is about the dharma and adharma and when will Krishna come? We are also waiting.
Okay. See, I was watching this serial Sri Krishna, which is telecast on Doordarshan. And that is based on Bhagavata. So produced by Raman and Sagar. So Ramanand Sagar has done a lot of research and he has produced that serial. So I can take it as authentic, what is being told there. Krishna's avatara, though he has said that, in one of the places he says, "This is my last avatar," as Vishnu. But our Shastras say Dashavatara. So I am not competent to answer whether Krishna has come or will come or whatever it is. But my own interpretation or understanding of that is that uh, today in the Kali Yuga, if you just sit back and observe what is happening all around the world, there are so many spiritual people emerging, not only in India, so many people emerging all around the world. And, there is a movement which I did not tell. In the physics today, which was studying matter, has come to the conclusion that ultimately what exists in the universe is consciousness, not matter. So many Westerners, even top ranking physical scientists, natural scientists, have turned towards Vedanta and Sankhya and Yoga. And therefore, there is an evolution of consciousness. And Sri Aurobindo has already written quite a lot about the evolution of consciousness. And we have many gurus, real spiritual masters all around, and real spiritual people even in the West. The difference between India and the West is here, because of our tradition, we have a particular attire and they wear this particular type of cloth and they go around, following with so many followers and all. But in the West, they just look very ordinary people, but they have very high evolved spiritual consciousness. So I think if you take the law of conservation of mass and energy, depending upon the number of people in the population in the world and the kind of evolution going on, there are spiritual people emerging all around who are all Krishna's amshas or Vishnu's amshas, who are trying to preserve dharma in different ways. So that is my answer for the question.
Okay, so
And what is dharma and what is adharma? Dharma and adharma are supposed to be dependent on desha, kala, and vartamana. That means we have certain dharma. And if you ask what is adharma, as I told already, being tamasic is adharma, being sattvic is being dharma. So therefore, today we have a lot of adharma in the name of dharma. So and at the same time, there are people who are trying to figure out, and each person has to find a path of his own in this confusion. You must find, it is difficult to say because dharma is going on in the name of adharma is going on in the name of dharma. It is somewhat difficult to pinpoint. You have to take each context and situation. This is all I can answer for that question. And as far as which book, introductory book, I'm really honestly sorry, I can't recommend this is the best book or anything, because there are so many books, commentaries. Which one will appeal to whom, I don't know. And I have not, I'm not in a position to say you read this book with a very definiteness. But for those in Kannada, people who know Kannada, I can recommend Dr. D.V. Gundappa's commentary on Bhagavad-Gita. It is called Jivana Dharma Yoga. So Jivana Dharma Yoga is the title he has given for that. And I think he, as a statesman, a man of wisdom, he was able to relate Bhagavad Gita to contemporary times, and he gave a series of lectures in Bangalore. So that is a compendium of his lectures. And as far as the English version is concerned, there are so many commentaries. Swami Rama has written a book called Perennial Psychology or Bhagavad-Gita. So that is one of the book from a psychological perspective, because Swami Rama studied psychology and he established Himalayan International Institute. These are the two books I can think of, but there is Somnathananda's Gita Bhavdare. There are many books in many different languages. So probably somebody else in this group of participants may better suggest than me. Yeah.
Okay, going to the next question, but before that, if I'm allowed to tell one thing quickly, I have been suggesting the universal message of Bhagavad Gita from Swami Ranganathananda to many people. In fact, there are close to about 50 people who have been constantly reading that. So for those people who want to start Bhagavad Gita, that looks like a more comprehensive picture. That's one of my suggestions. And going to the next three questions, sir, they all look related to each other. So there is one interesting question by Vishi. Probably it's Vishwa or Vishwanath, something like that. So Vishi, so is meditation overrated? Because people continue to have same weakness even after years of meditation.
Yes, Vishi's observation is correct. It is overrated. You see, it has become a fad, and people have all kinds of notions about meditation. And meditation is helpful only to the extent of relaxing one's mind. But beyond that, you see, if you take Yoga Sutra, for example, as our guiding framework, dhyana, dharana, and samadhi come only after yama, niyama, pratyahara, pranayama. That means uh, one disciple of Sri Aurobindo, Haridas Chaudhary, he has distributed Ashtanga Yoga into three categories: ethico-religious practices, physical psychological practices, and psycho-spiritual practices. So today what has happened, for whatever reason, we have gone to dhyana, dharana, and samadhi straight away, without giving any importance to ethico-religious principles. Ethico-religious principles are the foundation for any further understanding, and that is where the question of developing more of sattva, etc., comes through social action and interpersonal relationship and all that. But that is something totally neglected, and this has been observed. This has happened primarily because of some of our gurus going from India to the West, and they have not emphasized on dhyana, on these aspects. They have given more emphasis on meditation. So initially, researchers on meditation were very enthusiastic to understand meditation from a scientific point of view, leaving aside all the supportive aspects of any particular spiritual practice. They try to concentrate it as a psychological process of attention and concentration. After 10 or 20 years of research, some of those psychologists, pioneers in America, they themselves said giving up, these other practices, as in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra or in Buddhist practices, which are related to ethical values, etc., is a big mistake. And they said we have to understand dhyana, dharana, etc., in a religious spiritual context. So this context of spirituality is very important, and meditation as one component of the whole process is definitely overrated. it should not be, because we have to develop other values. And Bhagavad Gita, in the whole process, though it has no dhyana yoga written extensively, comes as some here and there as a part of Atma Samyama Yoga and such things in some chapters. So dhyana should not be overemphasized. It is ultimately what we are looking for: self-regulation, self-transformation through action, compassion, detachment, developing values, reducing our Arishatvargas. These are the things which has to improve us. Dhyana alone will not do anything. Dhyana, if somebody does, somebody may get some altered state experiences, which may be very fantastic. But how, whether that translates into a matured spiritual existence is the question. And my doctoral thesis was basically on that. So there is a difference between becoming spiritually mature and having some wonderful meditative experience. It is not always necessary to have so many wonderful experiences through meditation. Okay, what is the second question, sir?
So there is one
Hello.
interesting, yeah, there is an interesting question here.
Huh.
If observer must be separated from the observed,
Huh.
then how do you study the mind in psychology?
Oh, mind in psychology is studied in an indirect way, in the sense, and a direct way. When it comes to studying people, there is what is called field research, or studying people in a group, or individually observing people, making note of the how they function. So this is one approach. Then second approach is to ask them to report about themselves. This is what we do using questionnaires or interviewing or administering some psychological tests. And of course, there is a third method of experimentation where we put people into certain situations and observe. That certain situation can be a social situation, or it can be a laboratory condition. And these are all called third person methodology. Then observing a person closely, trying to understand through sharing, being a participant observer, is called second person methodology. And knowing by identity, which has come nowadays, particularly because of Aurobindo's work, knowledge through identity. That means a person will know the other person through some kind of a non-dual experience. This is called knowledge by identity. This is called first-person approach. Now, our Mahatmas and many evolved people have a first-person approach. They can know you, but that is not part of modern psychology. Modern psychology still is, in a very Newtonian physical mold, so to say. Okay.
So how do we understand Vishwarupa Darshana of Bhagavan Shri Krishna?
That that understanding of Vishwarupa Darshana of Bhagavan Sri Krishna is a matter of experience in the realm of mind. How Arjuna had that Vishwarupa Darshana, I am not competent to tell, because we have to just take what is written in the Bhagavad Gita. But I can say this, that in the last 60 years, many people in the West have taken LSD and other psychedelic substances, and during that time they have experienced many things, and based on many of those experiences which are described in Indian Puranas about Loka, etc., etc. So ultimately, our culture conditions our mind to experience certain things in certain way. So if you ask me how Arjuna might have experienced, I can only answer saying how Ramanand Sagar has portrayed it or has depicted it in Sri Krishna serial, because that is based on certain description of Vishwarupa Darshana, where Krishna has, so many different faces and this and that and all. Some of these are described in Bhagavatam. Based on Bhagavatam's description, they have created something. Now, many of these experiences or visions of God, of our universe, or Loka, etc., deities and all, they are all highly culturally conditioned. So, if there is a Greek person experiencing something supernatural and spiritual, then his experience will be something of Greek gods. If an Indian experiences, it is of the Hindu gods in many circumstances, in most of the time. But there are exceptions where a foreigner who has no knowledge of the Indian mythology can also experience. And it is one of the psychologists by name Carl Jung. He said we have a collective unconscious. That means all the memories of the human race are, stored in a realm of the mind, in a level of the mind about which we are not conscious. So, if somebody experiences something thousands of miles away, not having any knowledge of that culture, then we have to take that and say. So, therefore, how Krishna's Vishwarupa Darshana happened to Arjuna is something Bhagavata, whatever we have to rely on. That's all we can do. But for somebody else, it may happen in a different way.
Okay. So we have, sir, it's 8:25. You want to take one more question?
Yes, all right. No problem.
Yeah. So I feel Bhagavad Gita gives a deeper insight into psychology on source of consciousness, to which modern psychology has a narrow perspective. Your view on this is requested.
Yes, yes. See, but not Bhagavad Gita. Our Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam. It is one of the Prasthana Trayas, which speaks about the highest consciousness. Brahma Sutra, Upanishad, and Bhagavad Gita are called Prasthana Trayas. And Bhagavad Gita is some kind of a essence of everything. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita, you need not study Brahma Sutra and Upanishads. You study Bhagavad Gita thoroughly, whatever that is there, it is in a very succinct way. Everything has been said. In fact, just to tell you, because of the coronavirus, in the last so many months, myself and my wife watched all the serials on Indian mythology and Puranas and all whatever that available on television and YouTube. And so I was telling her in the morning that today I am better equipped to understand Bhagavad Gita shlokas than what I could have done just last year, because there are many things about all this information is in a condensed manner given in Bhagavad Gita, and we will not be able to understand what is the import of that particular shloka if we don't have a background of our own Indian, Itihasa, Purana, Ramayana, Mahabharata, our Upanishads, and all that. So the world view knowledge is very important to understand Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, we cannot understand, because Krishna, in a very short manner, he has given, or Veda Vyasa has condensed and given everything. So we need to get back to that. Therefore, question on consciousness is definitely there. There is no doubt about it. My opinion, see, I am not just modern psychologist. I don't claim, I don't have a rigid identification with any particular school of thought, whether it is Western or Indian. So what I say is, we have all these things, but the problem is, because it is in Sanskrit and because it has come in the oral tradition, um, most of our attention has gone into preserving this in a sacred way, in chanting systematically and all that. But we also have to develop the skills of communicating this in a meaningful way and relate to contemporary developments. In this matter, many Westerners are better than Indians. This is my opinion. Otherwise, it's a source of knowledge on consciousness also.
Okay, so maybe one last question, if we can take it quickly, sir. Uh,
Yes.
what is the difference, essential difference between spirituality and religion? Are they two different things, or both of them are the same?
Yeah, they are different, as contemporary psychologists and sociologists are defined. When we speak of religion, it refers to a structured way of living, having faith in a particular God, following a particular tradition, carrying out the practices prescribed in it. But spirituality is to reach beyond a particular framework and realize the fundamental truth or absolute reality and get connected to that. So in India, what has happened, we have the Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman. The Nirguna Brahman is the idea of abstract understanding. Saguna Brahman is the manifestation, including the deities and God and all that. And uh, our Upanishads are asking us to go beyond the Saguna Brahman. But what we are happening is, over the period, we are getting more and more attached to Saguna than Nirguna. We are losing that fundamental consciousness or self-realization. And as we have come towards Kali Yuga, because of the Westerners, Britishers coming, French coming, Dutch coming, and all, because they compared our Sanatana Dharma with their religious traditions, they created the word Hindu, and we have adopted it. Indian, we have adopted this. We have become limited in our own perspective about our own Sanatana Dharma. And we have trying to compete with them in matters of religious practice or religious observance or religious idol or this or that. But if you read the biography of people like Ramakrishna, Ramana, Sai Baba, Shirdi, or Puttaparthi, or Mata Amritanandamayi, or many, or Upanishads in general, they are all people who have been telling us, don't get stuck with that, go beyond. But we are becoming more and more narrow. So that is the fundamental difference between spirituality and religion. And since this is the end of my talk, I would like to share a personal thing, which I wanted to share in the beginning, but I did not. Today, only I went through all the chapters of Bhagavad-Gita in detail, just to make sure that I am not missing anything from that. All these years, I opened some shloka or some chapter and studied whatever shloka which appealed to me. So therefore, studying Bhagavad Gita in a religious way, without reflecting upon it, without trying to understand what it is all about, is not going to help anybody, either the person or the society. We have to dwell upon it. We have to do manana and nididhyasa. Shravana alone and chanting alone will not help. So with this confession, I am closing. Okay. Yes? Swaroop? Gayatri? Who is there and who is not there? Mr. Charan?
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful webinar. We really enjoyed listening and a lot of inputs, a lot of inspiring thoughts from your side. Thank you so much for this wonderful time and explaining all this, sharing all these thoughts. We thank from Nirakula and Chatra both. And a small announcement for all the participants. Tomorrow we have another webinar at the same time. Kindly do participate in the webinar as well.
Sorry, there was a problem with the internet here. Sorry. So we've accommodated most of the questions. In case you have not done it, kindly forgive us. There's a time constraint. So tomorrow, as Charan sir was just concluding with this, statement. Tomorrow we have a very interesting personality coming and sharing with all of us the essence of Bhagavad-Gita. So it's from Timappa Hegde. Dr. Timappa Hegde is one of the country's top neurosurgeons. He is somebody who goes on to operate for about 8 hours at a stretch. So such a person would bring in his personal experiences and also connect that with Bhagavad Gita. So we thank Kiran Kumar sir. I know sir for the last 10 years. I've had great moments with him. So I always wanted to have him as the first speaker, and I'm sure he has illumined all of us with his thoughts. It was wonderful. I've listened to him many a times, and I still spend time with him once in a while to listen to his new thoughts. So thank you once again so much, sir, for the entire session. So we will have you soon with more webinars coming up. And I have, for all the participants out there, I have posted sir's email ID in the chat box. You can use that to personally have a conversation with him. So with this we wind up. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. One last reminder for all of you to fill in the feedback form, and in case you like to donate, you can always donate. And this is a third webinar, and I tell you with pride, all of our webinars have been a great hit with a lot of viewership, increasing each passing day. So continue to help us with your donations, and we make sure every penny you give gets directed towards this, esteemed speakers and for their service towards the Sanatana Dharma. Yeah. With this said, we wind up. Thank you so much, all of you, once again. Shubharatrihi.
Swaroop?
Thank you so much, Kiran sir. We will wind up the session.
Sure.
Meet you all participants tomorrow in the